Hey everyone, welcome to Star Flag Media. Listen, we're gonna get right into things with this video. As you can tell, either by the title or the thumbnail, Sony is messing up. Sony is back to being arrogant Sony, and we're gonna get into the details of why Sony is so currently being so arrogant about its position. But first, let me get into a little bit, just a tiny bit of history here as to how Sony has been over the years. I'm going to start with, their introduction to the gaming world with the PlayStation 1, which was massively successful out of the gate, and actually shows you that Nintendo was the one that was the top dog for so long in the 80s and all the way into the mid 90s, that they were the arrogant ones. And when they lost exclusivity to, say, Final Fantasy VII, Nintendo felt like, we don't need Final Fantasy. And then comes along the PlayStation and becomes this massive hit, and what's one of the biggest hits on the PlayStation that drove millions of console sales, if it wasn't Final Fantasy VII. Well, you fast forward, PlayStation 1 is a massive hit, PlayStation 2 follows up, and Sony starts finding a foothold in the industry as far as starting to bring first-party games into the fold. Now we're seeing things like Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper and games that weren't really on the PS1, where really third parties were propping up the PlayStation 1. The PS2 is now kind of finding its own thing, and it is massively successful. They included a DVD player, which was the genius move of the entire decade, in my opinion, maybe even more, because the PlayStation 2 becomes the best-selling home console of all time. Switch 1 24 years later, 25 years later, is now on the brink of breaking that record. So think about how long that record has stood the test of time. PS2 is just massive hit, right? Over 150 million consoles sold. It's just gangbusters. But what does this do to Sony? They look at their competition at that time, Nintendo, GameCube, and the original Xbox, and the Sega Dreamcast even. Dreamcast went on to sell about 15 million consoles, give or take. The Xbox and the GameCube, both around 22 million-ish consoles sold, and then 150 million for the PS2. It was just like, holy crap, it's not even close. So Sony got very, very arrogant at that time, right? They had hits like Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City, and these were games that really cemented Sony as the powerhouse of the gaming industry in the early 2000s, right? And then they felt like they could do no wrong. They felt like nothing can stop them. So they go ahead and they announce the PlayStation 3, and everything should be in Sony's favor, right? Well, Xbox 360 gets shown off, and it looks pretty popular. It looks like it's going to be expanding on their Xbox Live service, and everything's going to be great and dandy. And then Sony is like, well, we're not going to have a as thriving community online, but it will be free, so free is always better. However, they get us with the infamous video clip.
The 60 gigabyte PlayStation 3 for $599 US.
$599 as the price. $599 back in 2005. It was an insane number. Those are numbers. That's what a console will cost you today, and we consider that high. $599 US was the price. And instantly everybody cringed, like, holy crap, that is mega expensive. And they were like, well, it's Blu-ray, this is going to be bleeding edge technology, it's going to be backwards compatible with PS1, PS2, PS3, and they try to sell us the idea, right? But then, that wasn't quite enough, because people were more than happy to keep the consoles that they owned or move over to an Xbox 360. And when asked straight up, hey, gamers think that this price is ridiculously high. Well, the Sony president at the time, PlayStation CEO, famously utters the words, if people want the PlayStation 3, they would be willing to work more hours. Get another job, basically. Get a second job. Work more hours. Then you can afford our console. arrogance to the T. Not to mention, Grand Theft Auto no longer going to be like this timed exclusive. It's, GTA 4 is going to come out. It's going to be on Xbox 360, and GTA 5 will be on Xbox 360. And Sony, they felt like they didn't need the exclusivity. We're the top dog. Well, along comes the company that, pretty much got its ass ate for lunch. Pause. During the last game cycle, Nintendo, they come out with a much more affordable, easier to play console with strong first party lineup. I mean, you cannot sleep on the Nintendo Wii's catalog of first party hits, and that becomes a global household phenomenon, becoming at that time the second best-selling console of all time. And guess what though? Sony, no longer the king of the castle, is really behind. The Xbox 360 is actually now in second place. And for the majority of that console generation, the Xbox 360 was the high-end console to own, and a Wii was your second console. So if you own the PS3 and you own a 360, you also owned a Wii. So it was definitely that second console in the home. Now, here's the thing. Sony course corrected. They switched up the interface. They did patches. They added party chat, and they fixed their online system. And they said, you know what, we're gonna course correct. And at the end of that console generation, when everybody had already moved on to the next generation, PlayStation 3 ekes out the Xbox 360 in sales and becomes the second place console of that generation, with the Wii far ahead of it, almost by double. Okay, so Sony, they course correct, and they realize, you know what we need to do? We need to start banging out first party hits. We need to give people a reason to own a PlayStation 3. We can no longer be propped up by third parties. So they start bringing out hits like Uncharted and God of War and all of these games that now you're looking at your console and you're going, oh, okay, the PlayStation 3 has some killer first party games. It's a reason for me to own this console. Well, they moved that same momentum forward to the PlayStation 4, and arguably the PlayStation 4 has the best first party PlayStation Studio games ever, and I mean PS1, PS2, and I'm talking about first party games, not the catalog as a whole. It's Sony's strongest showing of what they are capable of doing when they actually have stiff competition and they want to be in first place. And PlayStation 4 indeed did that. Not only were they undercutting Microsoft's Xbox One in price by $100, because Microsoft did the crappiest move ever by forcing you to buy a Kinect with your Xbox One, and also Xbox Live just kind of wasn't it at the time, and they wanted to do that DRM stuff, and Sony had that famous dig at the Xbox One when they were like, this is how we share games, and they just handed one game to another, and that was such a moment even back then, right? It was like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Like they're really hammering home, we cannot allow Xbox to come as close as they did in this generation as they did with the Xbox 360. And at that point, Nintendo, they brought out the Wii U, and that was doing its own thing over there. Basically was a glorified Xbox 360 as far as power with the Wii U gamepad. But it wasn't their main competition, especially because the Wii U's marketing was horrible, and it ended up coming in last place that generation. So PlayStation 4 now has the PS1, the PS2, and the PS4 as its top-selling generation console, the top-selling console of that generation. And PS4 is textbook what Sony should be doing. But let's talk about what arrogance did they do during that time. Well, Sony's arrogance also, they looked at the handheld market and they looked at the Game Boy Advance and they thought, I want a piece of that pie. I want a piece of that pie. So they go ahead and they make themselves, the PSP. But the PSP, it's moderate success. It gets easily beat by the Nintendo DS, again, almost 2-1 in sales. And they say we're going to take another crack at it with the PS Vita. They thought there's no way that they're going to buy the 3DS over this. It's the same price as the 3DS. It's going to be way more powerful. It's going to give you as close to a PS3 experience on a handheld as you possibly get. But then Sony goes, and what did they do with the PS Vita? Well, they decided they wanted to make everything proprietary. You want to get a memory card, you had to pay over $120 for a PlayStation Vita memory card, when a standard SD card at the time was maybe $25 for the same amount of memory. So, here they are force feeding their people, or, their Sony fans, what they want to sell you because they felt like we have this space taken care of. So now the Vita goes on to be a subpar performance. And what does Sony do? They abandon it. They abandon all first-party stuff, and they move all of their stuff over to PlayStation 4. And then they hope that third parties are going to prop up the little system again. Well, guess what? Nintendo dropped the 3DS price by $100, and they just threw a shit ton of development behind it. And we saw some crazy-looking good ports. We had a Resident Evil original game on the 3DS that looked amazing with the glasses-free 3D on top of that, which was a gimmick that was something at the time that people were looking for. 3DS goes on and it just destroys the Vita in sales, and the Vita flops. Okay, so PS4 is a big success. So why am I still ranting? How is arrogant Sony back? Well, the PlayStation 5 comes in strong. Don't get me wrong. Those first 2 years, even though there was a chip shortage and all that stuff, like people, you couldn't find it in stores. It was a hot seller. And again, don't get me wrong. The PS5 is still very much a hot seller to this day. But what am I going to get at? Well, everything started to change last year. The end of 2023. We are now in 2025, but at the end of 2023, we get kind of a little, hey, there's nothing really coming to the PlayStation 4 first party wise. As far as huge bangers, it's going to be an off year because we're focusing our development on these games that we have currently, and it takes longer to make these games than it used to. The budgets are huge. So, and they actually go on to say, if you really want to fund these big AAA projects, you have to buy a remake or a remaster, or else these games just, we can't do them. And you know what? The crowd, the audience for PlayStation, everybody actually was like really cool about it and gave them an out and was like, you know what? Okay, hey, they told us 2024, not really going to be a year where we should expect much out of them. Well, they got lucky twice. One, Helldivers 2 from AA Studio became a viral hit. Thanks to platforms like TikTok and other platforms, it just became a huge viral hit, and it was a surprise even to them. But Sony, they couldn't just be happy with that, and then they did the fiasco of the PSN must be a PSN subscriber. They implemented it. They took away people's ability to play the game on countries where PSN isn't available. By the way, they never restored that. So people in those countries could still not, even after they walked it back a few months later, those people in those countries could still not play their games. Then we found out we had Helldivers was big. Astrobot was Game of the Year again, another surprise, just massive hit. Then Sony goes on to show us things like the PS Portal, and they're like, oh, it's $200 and it streams, and people are curious. And of course, the diehard PlayStation fans, they go out and they purchase the thing. It's not a massive seller, but it's, relative to what they needed to push out there. I believe they might have hit their goal, which is good for Sony. And then we get the next hardware announcement. PlayStation 5 Pro. PlayStation 5 Pro. And everybody's hyped because this thing is supposed to be the next, big step up for them, right? This is their midlife console refresh. Well, first and foremost, before they announce the PS5 Pro, they tell us that we're at the tail end of the PlayStation 5 life cycle, that it's almost over. And we're like, wait a minute. Great games came out year 1 and 2, but really, what else? besides Call of Duty, which is on everything, and all these remasters, which we've played. And what else is there? Well, 2024, we gave you a pass and we understood. And then we get the news that all the games that they were developing in 2024 were all live service games. Live service games, huh? And then 12 of them were in development by their big studios. So this is all that they were working on. Except for Naughty Dog and Insomniac, which we saw the big Wolverine leak, which practically the entire game being leaked out. And then we saw Intergalactic, a teaser for Intergalactic by Insomniac, or Naughty Dog, sorry. And everything else was live service games. And those 12 games that they had in development, 9 of them are now canceled. 9 games out of the 12. So this pushes us forward to the state of play, right? State of play. They show nothing. All third-party games. The arrogance of the PS5 Pro was that it's going to be $700. $700 for the mid-console refresh. And those great PS5 exclusives that were going to be on PS5, you know, the reason to own a PS5 ended up being having PlayStation 4 counterparts, taking away that exclusive feel for even the games that came out at the beginning. Miles Morales, that was on PS4. Horizon Forbidden West, that had a PS4 game as well. It just takes away from that exclusive feel. Why would gamers upgrade to the PS5 when they're getting, you know, it's a marginal improvement? Sure, the graphics are better. Sure, the performance is better. But it's a PS4. Those PS4 games were developed for PS4. So the PS4 games at heart that also work on your PS5. The PS4 Portal, being a glorified Wii U gamepad. Well, that's cool, $200. So now if you want your PlayStation experience with the PS Portal, you're up to $900. Mind you, you don't need the Portal, but let's say you're a diehard and you want to get the full experience. So you go out and you buy yourself this PS5 Pro. It's digital only. You want to add a hard drive? You're almost up to $800 now. $800 is a beefy PC graphics card. You can build a very decent whole PC with a halfway decent graphics card for that price. You really can. I've done videos on this previously, and I've put links in it if you haven't found it yet. I will leave another link, or you could build your own PC and put the parts in yourself that are comparable to a PS5 Pro, and you can do it for under $800. Okay. So, paying that cool $200 for the PS Portal to stream games from a Wi-Fi connection. Well, with the recent PSN outage, we realized you couldn't even pair your PS Portal, even if you had the games on the hard drive for your console. And guess what? If you had just bought the PS5 Pro and you wanted to play your back catalogs of those physical games that you bought for your PS5, well, you couldn't pair the drive because that talks to PSN as well. So you couldn't even play your physical games because PSN had an outage. So we get this great state of play. It's gonna take us out. It's gonna save us, right? It's gonna save us. The state of play. All the good games are gonna be on there. This is gonna be the reason for me to own a PS5 in 2025. Mind you, yes, they showed off Ghost of Yotei and they showed off Intergalactic. Both supposedly are going to be coming out sometime in 2025 with no official date. As far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, with no official date set in stone. So what did they show off on their PlayStation State of Play? Well, they They showed off Monster Hunter Wilds, which looked amazing. And that game is going to be available on everything. Xbox and PC. Xbox Series S, Windows, PC, PlayStation 5, and I guarantee you when the Switch 2 comes out, it's going to be able to run that. They showed off Shinobi, Art of Vengeance, which looks amazing. Available on Xbox Series X and S, Windows, PC, PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. So even the Switch got that game. Sonic Racing Cross Worlds is on the way. Available on Xbox, Switch, it's on everything. Okay. Digimon Storytime Stranger is real. It looks really cool. Coming to everything. Lost Soul Aside. It's going to be on PlayStation 5 and Windows PC day one. Day one, it's going to be on there. Borderlands 4. Available on Xbox Series X and S, PC and PlayStation 5. Split Fiction. Available on Xbox Series X, PC and PS5. Directive 8020. Xbox Series X, PC, and PS5. Onimusha is going to be on Xbox, PC, and PS5. Metal Gear Solid Delta, Xbox, PC, and PS5. Hell is Us, Xbox, PC, and PS5. Lies of P DLC, Xbox, PC, and PS5. Days Gone Remastered arrives on PS5 with new content available for PC via DLC. So PC owners aren't even being left out and will be able to pick up the new content in form of DLC. So it's not even need. There's no need for a remaster. This game is old. So hey, you own the PC version. Guess what? You've already got it. And then what did they say? Hey, if you got the PS4 version of Days Gone, it's only $10 to upgrade. Which, by the way, that's good. $10 to upgrade. That's great. But I say go to GameStop, buy yourself a used copy of the PS4 version for like what, $5 to $10, and then just pay the $10 and upgrade it on PS5. That's it. That's what you got to do. Now you don't have to pay the full price tag of that game. So I mean, why would you give them your money otherwise? Celebrate is coming to PC in June 2025. Blueprint coming to Xbox and Game Pass and PS5. Abiotic Factor is headed to Xbox, PC, and PS5. Tides of, you get the picture. Mind's Eye, all of those games, the entire presentation minus Saros. And guess what? Saros coming in 2026. 2026, next year. Sony feels like because Microsoft is taking a step back from traditional hardware, first party, manufacturing, that they get to just be arrogant again and not make games and let, just like they did during the PS1 and PS2, let third parties take up the mantle and keep their console alive. And don't get me wrong, it will work for this generation because this is there's no competition, right? It's Switch, which handles completely different types of games. Hardware is completely different. It's the affordable console. And then there's the Series X and S and the PS5 and the PS5 Pro, right? Which are the high-end consoles, and I put that in quotes. And then, of course, there's PC. PC it's its own thing as well. I think that's the only one that actually saw a growth this year in install base for people switching over. I think it was an 8% year-over-year growth in install base, but that's neither here nor there. The question becomes when are gamers going to look at their now $800 system and go, why did I pay for that? Why did I pay for that? Because every single one of those games are going over to Xbox. You can get an Xbox Series S for around $200 now, $199. I've seen them everywhere for $199. And if you're not dying for 4K 60, which most gamers don't even have 4K 60 capable monitors or TVs at this time, then an Xbox Series S is good enough. What are you going to get out of it? 900p, 1080p 60, or 1080p 30? That's good enough for like 90% of the gamers at this time. And Sony is being arrogant with their console because they don't care. They've got you. They're repeating history. $599 price for the PS3 was considered outrageous. We're now paying $800 for a marginal, fragmented better version of a PS5 game. And some of those games that got upgraded to PS5 Pro versions were running worse on the Pro version. You guys tell me what's going to happen when the PS6 rolls around. Sony had to start from scratch with those games that were gone. 9 canceled games? Those companies are starting from scratch on new games. And they said, well, it takes longer to develop new games. So what are we going to wait another 4 years before we see another flurry of good PlayStation Studio games? I don't know. To me, Sony's messing up. And Nintendo, with the Switch 2 right around the corner, is salivating at their opportunity to be the top-selling console of their generation again. It's Switch 1 is on its way to being the top-selling system of all time. They're only around 10 million units, a little bit less than that now, I'm assuming, away from the all-time record, beating the PS2. And I can see the PS5 matching the PS4 in overall sales, but what is the PS6 going to be like? Because, hey, we know that PS5 is going to sell more because GTA 6 is on its way, and right now it's kind of the default console to have for the high-end stuff. But again, if you're a gamer who doesn't care about 4K 60 and you can get an Xbox Series S and it's going to run GTA at 900p 30 frames per second, that's good enough for like 90% of the people out there to get that GTA 6 experience. It's going to be the same experience, just in a lower resolution. And if you don't think that that's good enough, ask the 150 million Switch owners and all of the Witcher 3, Doom, Eternal, and Wolfenstein people. Millions of copies sold on the Switch at 720p, 30 frames per second. So yes, it's good enough for 90% of the people out there. I think that Sony needs to really liven up, and unless they are doing which what I've been talking about on the channel for a while, which is eventually following Microsoft's footsteps and going multi-platform, which the new president and CEO has said he likes the future of multi-platform, including PC. I think that it's going to be a real interesting generation next time around, because I do still think that Xbox will come out with one more traditional Xbox, and if Sony blunders it as much as I think they're blundering it right now, if they continue this path and they don't course correct like they did with the PS3, it leaves the door wide open for a company like Microsoft to just reverse its course and go, we've got a path here, boys. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining us. Like and comment. Subscribe if you can. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a ton. I will catch you guys in the next video.